Hey, John Gilroy here. Can artificial intelligence accelerate safe and secure software development? Hit the music, Manny. Welcome to the Federal Tech Podcast, the podcast that connects you to federal technology leaders. My name is John Gilroy, and I will be your moderator. Our guest today is Joel Krooswik, Federal CTO at Gitlab. And we are recording this at Gitlab's DevSecOps World Tour in lovely downtown Washington, D.C. Well, Joel, I talk to a lot of people about technology. I hear buzzwords and popular terms all the time. And there's a word that seems to be popping up more and more, and the word is refactoring. And I don't want everyone to turn off this podcast, but I want you to maybe give a bird's eye view of what refactoring is and what it means for the people in the federal government that want to improve their software.
So refactoring unto itself is not a new thing. The average developer spends time every day refactoring their code. It's just something mundane. It's not something that we love in development, but it's something that has to happen. But AI-led refactoring and what AI is doing to refactoring has created a whole new opportunity, something really, really interesting. And so as we chat through some of the refactoring things today, I think the AI angle of this is where things get exceptionally interesting, because we're now no longer just talking about the little things that we're doing on a daily basis. While those still are in play, now we're talking about getting into big legacy systems and converting them into a modern, more effective code. And once we go down that road, we've got some really interesting conversations that evolve.
So how can AI be leveraged to address the specific needs and constraints of public sector modernization?
Well, there's multiple avenues here. I think the first thing is, do we even know what's running? Right? We've got code that's running. It's potentially running in some data closet someplace that we don't want to open the door to. Or it's running on a mainframe someplace, and it's been there for years, for decades. And so when we start thinking about this, the first question is, what does the code do? That's an easy question to answer if people can understand what language it was written in. But if it's written in SAS or Ada or COBOL, maybe Fortran, maybe assembly, who knows? Who actually understands what that code does? Who wrote that code? I keep hearing more and more that the people who wrote the code are no longer with us. It doesn't mean no longer employed. It means literally have left the planet. And I mean, not to be indelicate, but that's a really difficult situation for us to be in, of anybody who understood that code is gone. How in the world do we modernize code like that? It's not a simple process.
So normally, let's say we had an application on an older piece of hardware that was very expensive to maintain, and you'd get a team of software developers to try to pick through and understand what exactly the code was doing in order to transition it to a modern system. And so what you're saying is that there are methods or techniques now where you can use artificial intelligence to look into that old system of COBOL and understand, so this is what's going on. So if we make a transition to the cloud, it's not going to be a lift and shift. It's going to be an improvement and a reduction in cost.
That's exactly right. I don't want you lifting and shifting anything. Don't do that. The refactoring thing is interesting because there's two different approaches. One is you can explain what the code does and then rewrite that code into a new language. That is a modernization approach that's very interesting, because now AI is telling us, well, here's what the original code did. Here's what you can do to rewrite that code, or let me help rewrite that code for you. But that's a two-stage approach. The other thing that's becoming really popular now is kind of an iterative refactoring approach where you literally just have AI rewrite it for you. I kind of understand what this code is going to do. Take what it does today in that C language and let's move it over to a memory safe language like Rust or something like that. And when we get into that space, AI is doing all the heavy lifting for us. And at that point, we're approving it as it iteratively rewrites the code.
Now, here's the problem. I remember last summer, it was all kind of razzle-dazzle, AI this, AI that, and we'll write some code and it'll finish off the code for us. It was great, right? Now, the problem is that it may not be optimized. And so if we go, I think we need a step beyond AI. Maybe we need smart AI or something that has guidelines. Or you talked about when you were up on stage this morning about bowling and those guardrails and everything else. Maybe we need guardrails for the AI. And so I think that's the approach that Gitlab has with its products. It says, look, these are some options, and here are the safe options. I mean, that's what they look at, isn't it?
It is. And what the safety looks like is changing rapidly. I mean, AI is evolving so fast. When you and I first met, it was back in June of 24 at AWS, and we talked about some AI code generation stuff at that time, just loosely. The acceptance rate on code has gone up nearly 4x since then. The amount of good code AI can write just in a short period of time has gone up dramatically. So when it comes to the safeguards, yes, we want to make sure we have them in place, but it's also incrementally improving. So as it improves, those safeguards are there to keep us from going off the rails, but they're not there so much anymore to keep us from doing the wrong thing, if you will.
Well, you referenced artificial intelligence. I'm sure in the last 4 or 5 months, lots and lots of data has been collected, petabytes of data. And so can this refactoring help in application scalability?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, some of the best stories I've heard around refactoring come with 3 typical outcomes. One is a dramatic reduction of the code base. Like, how much code does it take? And we're hearing in some cases 80 to 90% less code, but the application still functions exactly the same way, which is remarkable. But the other 2 outcomes are speed and scale. So things typically can run faster with a whole lot more load on them because, of course, as you get out of what you had, which is typically a large monolithic application of some kind, you're now taking advantage of the cloud, the microservices, all the cool things that are available. We can just do more with less.
Now, wait a minute. Wait a cotton-picking minute. We got people at 3-letter agencies that are going to say, oh, yeah, Joel, what about security? You're forgetting security, aren't you?
Of course. You got to go there. Yeah, no, so from a security perspective, this is what I love about the application of Gen AI across the whole application development ecosystem is it's not just tied to code creation. Look, AI is going to make some mistakes. It's going to create code that's not the highest quality all the time. It's going to create code that's not bug-free all the time. But what AI does well is iterates on its own code. It writes its own tests. It scans and makes sure that the security scans have run, and then it works to remediate those vulnerabilities on our behalf. So as it goes through the system, right, through this iterative cycle, it's actually writing and cleaning its code. So ultimately, I'm hoping we get there, right, where this code comes out squeaky clean day one. But for right now, what we have is these security vulnerabilities being addressed and remediated more quickly. And you've used the term shift left a few times as we've communicated, and the whole idea of shift left fatigue is very real. Developers get stuck in these vulnerabilities, fixing security things. This is what I expect to be able to help them not be stuck in vulnerability land for the rest of their day and to be able to move back into what they really want to do, which is innovative, creative coding.
There are people in Chicago, of all places, that may work for banks, and they're using AI and DevSecOps too, and we know that. And they're going to sit and whine and complain and go, yeah, we have a bad football team, and nothing personal. And, we have this problem. And then people in Washington, D.C. will go, I wish I had it that easy. I mean, there's unique challenges with the federal government compared to using AI and DevSecOps. So maybe you can highlight some of those.
There are some unique ones, but it's interesting you highlighted banks right out of the gates, and thanks for calling on my hometown. We won't go there with the sports team right now. The reality is regulated industry faces a lot of the same struggles. They have a lot of things running on a mainframe someplace that's really old. What's interesting in the government space is a lot of what the legislation and the policy has brought to bear creates new places we have to have compliance. And compliance has become kind of a bad word in many, many different circles, right? Because how do we balance security and speed is the big question. Well, now it's security and speed. Where does compliance fit in that? Do I have a new triangle here? What is this? And so compliance is something that we're trying to automate at the same time. AI can help us real time with compliance by making sure that the things that we're doing, the way that we're executing things, are done so in a compliant manner. And that's a proactive thing. We're no longer checking boxes on a clipboard someplace to make sure we're compliant. We're getting it done real time. And I'm excited about that.
Okay, so let's say I use GitLab's and I refactor a certain system. I mean, how do I know it's working? I mean, really? Well, it's improved. Oh, really? How? I mean, what are the tools? What are the metrics?
So the metrics are, does it do exactly what it did before? Let's start with that one, right? We want it to work exactly the same way and be seamless to the user. Yes, it will improve, but we need the original operation to be seamless. And so test-driven development as a methodology is going to be very big in this environment, where if we want to refactor something, we need to start with the tests of, well, how did the application run day one? And once we know how it ran day one, now we can use those tests, have AI help us recode this application, have AI run its tests against its own code, and then we circle back and say, well, does everything still line up to where we started with this test-driven development methodology? And it's become something that I'm seeing more and more of as we look at refactoring and what's happening in the federal space.
I think the overview here, the big picture, is the software development lifecycle. All our listeners know what the hell it's all about. And so what AI can do is it can take certain aspects of the SDLC and make it quicker, make it safer, make it faster. And what you're saying is that there's ways to actually measure and have a metric on that activity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so, it's interesting as we look at what AI can do today, how do we understand whether we're improving or not? And it's interesting because today AI is reactive. The whole idea that I need to tell AI what I'm looking for and it will respond. It's not doing anything proactively. But where we're moving is proactive AI. And so when you think about it, today AI is an accelerator of what your current processes are. It's just accelerating things. When it can be more autonomous and start to give you kind of advice looking over your shoulder, that's proactive. That's autonomous AI. And at that point, it becomes a very different measurement. Now it's not just about, well, are we doing it faster? Are there fewer bugs? Now it's, are we getting all this stuff done real time? And so I liken it to this. If you're looking at acceleration, you've probably seen a Transformers movie, right? Did you know there's a Transmutators movie out there as well? It's a copycat. It's not a transformer. It's trying to be. And that's kind of where we are with AI today. It's not quite there. It's a transmutator, if you will, speeding up some things and copying some efforts of others. But we're entering a new era over the next, I would say, 6 to 12 months where this all changes again. And measuring that is going to become a completely new ballgame.
So you go in with your GitLab software, you refactor a certain application, it's better. About a year ago, when I first saw some of these demonstrations, it would be, and we can write in the code, like you mentioned earlier. The problem is where to get that code? And does it have weaknesses? And so I guess the real question is, is there a way to have code suggestions where they could say, this isn't autofill, this is one way to solve this problem, and then maybe an analyst has to take over, or who takes over from that situation?
So I like to recommend the ability to prompt AI as a customizable approach, right? So when I recommend prompting, I never recommend, hey, just do a refactor or just explain this code to me. Add a context. Explain this code in a way I understand. Refactor this to something that I know. And when it comes to prompting for code, I like to ask it for multiple responses. And a lot of times we don't think about that. We just say, well, what's it going to come back with? That's hopefully the best response. I like to say, give me 3 ways to solve that problem. And I'll pick what's best, right? So there's always more things we can do with AI than what you see on the surface within an application like GitLab Duo.
Earlier this morning, I heard David DeSanto give a talk, and he said a great line. He said, yeah, can't say David without AI. And he talked about AI this morning. And he used 3 words that I wrote down. I said, this applies to a lot of things. Root cause analysis. It's like, okay, so why? And what little factor impacted something else, you go back to the root cause. And this could be for many different aspects. But I think that's what Refactoring can do. It can boil it down to, so this is the real problem in all this. And it's so elusive and so difficult to find.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And root cause analysis is one of those things that is, if I look back in time, if I'd had this 7 or 8 years ago, I can't tell you how many hours I'd have back in my life, right? The whole idea of root causes being analyzed for me dynamically is huge. And so when we get down into that root cause and we get assistance from generative AI in remediating that quickly, oh, what a great experience that is for us, because we just lose way too much time analyzing things, hours and hours. Gen AI is starting to give us answers in minutes.
There are a lot of federal listeners who are interested in FedRAMP. Maybe you can give us an update on your FedRAMP status, and we can talk about what's going on in the next few years. What does Gitlab have planned for helping federal leaders in the next few years? At the conference, they talked about self-hosted models. They talked about Duo Pro. They talked about workflow. So give us an update from Joel on your FedRAMP status and talk about the future.
Yeah, so GitLab Dedicated for Government is it's a SaaS platform that's also FedRAMP in process at the moment, and we're moving down that road. I hope to have an update for that for you as well soon, but currently in process and available. And so that is an interesting thing from the perspective of not only the FedRAMP side, but also just the lack of maintenance, right? Nobody wants to apply all these patches and keep up with their installations anymore. So having something that's known and trustable out of the gates, especially from a client compliance perspective, is really helpful. But we're also going down the road, to your point, of self-hosted AI models. And so not only are we adding your context into your development environment, but you don't have to call outside for it. One of the things people love about GitLab over the years is, hey, I got a self-managed instance. I set it up in my environment. It's mine. I own it. You can now do the same thing with AI and have that AI model. So today, if you're in a cloud, it's going to reach out to something like Google or Anthropic and try to get information right back for your code. This lets you take the reins. And so we're pretty excited about this as well, as are a lot of our customers who are seeking to host things like this internally. And of course, as our suite of AI features evolves, you're going to be able to apply a lot more of those both in the cloud and in your self-hosted environment, end-to-end throughout the software development lifecycle.
GitLab Workflow, they talked about being proactive and saying, here's the problem. Wait, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I'm so excited about this one. Today, if I want to engage with GitLab Duo or with an AI feature, I need to push the button. Push the button, tell it what I want, and I'll get something back. The autonomous or the proactive AI is going to say, hey, I found a bug over here. It looks like a big deal. This could be the next Log4j. Like, ooh, big deal, right? The first question I got when Log4j came out was, great, I found it once. How do I find it the rest of the time? Autonomous AI, the GitLab Duo running in the background, will be able to say, it is in these 33 different places that you may not know about. Some of this is in maintenance mode code nobody's looking at. We're going to go ahead and fix this for you and have it ready to go. Just review this before it goes out. And having that all happen dynamically in the background saves us time and reduces that ability to breach a vulnerability just dramatically.
If you listening to this podcast, so you can rewind it to the beginning. I think in the first 3 minutes, we used the word visibility. So it starts with visibility, comes back to visibility, because what I have seen happen is, the term used to be called shadow IT, where John would get his credit card and load up an instance of something. But what's happening now is with Joel, the developer, has unintended consequences of something running that he didn't realize he automated, and this is a problem with automation. And so even a smart developer may not know they're having these things run in the background, taking up cycles and not even knowing it. And so maybe a tool that can add to the visibility would reduce a lot of unneeded processes.
Absolutely. That's the case. And the sky's the limit when we think about this, right? Because what are the other things we've been overlooking that are now going to be called to our attention?
Well, duplicate code. I mean, how do you know? Of course it's been duplicated. How would you know? It's so complex, but an AI system can say, here's duplicate code, bang, the same result, but it's a smaller footprint. All of a sudden that achieved what you wanted. Can it still do the existing thing?
Right. Yeah, and one of the biggest things I'm looking forward to is AI tends to comment its code, so I'll be able to actually read what's going on there too.
Yeah. Crystal ball time. We talked about 4 or 5 months back how it's changed a whole lot. I don't want to look. Let's go crazy and talk about 2025, a year from now. Is this going to quintuple again? Or I can't see how it can't.
Right. Yeah. If you ask somebody today that's been using generative AI in coding, hey, what's coding assistance doing for your productivity? We're hearing anywhere from 25 to maybe 55%, right? It really depends on the environment. But if you look at where we expect to go, once all this is really rolled out and it's proactive and we can handle more code at any given time as far as generation and refactoring and all that, we're looking to get to like a 7x multiplier, right? So you're at maybe a half X right now. So I'm expecting this to dramatically improve over the next year, where we see productivity spike in ways we just haven't seen in a very long time.
You know, it's exciting to be around in these years because you and I have been around long enough to know how tedious and some people say tiresome coding was, and testing it and then having bugs and trying to find them. And what's happening is, I guess the word is acceleration, huh? So what Gitlab is helping is to accelerate application refactoring by using AI in the DevOps world.
That's correct. Yeah. Wow. Today it's an accelerant. Tomorrow the transformer.
Speaking of the movie. Well, we're running out of time here, Joel. You have been listening to the Federal Tech Podcast with John Gilroy. I'd like to thank my guest, Joel Krooswik, Federal CTO of Gitlab.